Off for this book, but she has brought quite a few fans here. She's got fans, and so we're very excited, Cathi, and take over, and thanks for being our guest.
Thank you, Curtis. And thank you, everybody. Jim, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming out to see me, too. For those who did, I really appreciate it. Well, I'm very curious. Anyone feeling down about the election?
We haven't gotten the results yet.
Exactly. Let me tell you something. Power isn't only what you have, it's what the enemy thinks you have. And that is Alinsky tactic number 1. And that's what we're witnessing today, being played against our president. And it's important to understand what game they're playing, because I guarantee you President Trump gets it. He's gotten it since the very beginning. It's why so many people call him unpresidential, right? Or that he tweets too much. No. That's the game he has to play against them. So what does that mean? Power isn't only what you have, but what the enemy thinks you have. They've built a massive illusion. This is all an illusion, folks. This isn't even fact. It's not based on truth at all. Remember, they started off with fake polls, right? Yeah. Let's not forget this stuff. So easy to forget this stuff when we're mired down in the daily news. We forget how we got here. But look how we got here. They created the illusion that something just happened here, I think. Can you hear me still? Okay. They created an illusion that so that Trump, if he won, they could blame him for cheating. Yeah, that's what they did.
Backfire.
They didn't know he was going to come out with so many votes. And that's what's going to expose them in the end. They also, the illusion they did, by calling the states early, and some of them late, the ones he was winning, they created another illusion. This is all like a magic hand of tricks that they're doing to us. We can't fall for that. How about this? This is one of my favorites. Did anybody get a chance to pick one of these up? I think this is going to be worth some money someday. More than Dewey. Right? I'm hanging on to that. Because I am so confident that our president is going to pull this one out, just like he has pulled out of these coups since the day he got elected. He's going to. For those of you who are familiar with my book, you know it's all based on Saul Alinsky tactics, right? I take every tactic and open up a chapter with each one to explain how they're being used. But I also talk a little bit about cloward-piven, Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven. How many in here know them? Cloward-piven, so important in this whole equation. So let me tell you what they did. They wrote a series of strategy papers starting back in the 60s. One of the lesser-known ones is what's affecting us today. They wrote this one in 1982. It was called A Movement Strategy to Transform the Democratic Party. They never thought in a million years that either party would side with them on anything, because they were all about destroying our system, our country, and turning it into socialism. That's what they were all about, along with Alinsky. Okay? But they were shocked to find out that the Democrat Party was all in. So back then, the Democrat Party started selling their votes, or rather started selling our free stuff in exchange for votes. And that's been going on for a very long time. So nothing about today should shock us. That's the first thing. As a matter of fact, their strategy was all about flooding the polls with millions of new voters. Sound familiar? It was about the catastrophic disruption of our electoral systems. This was a strategy paper they wrote back in 1982, and by 1993, they were in the White House as Bill Clinton signed what bill? The voter bill. That's what's caused what we're seeing today. So another tactic that they're using really well against us, and it's important to recognize this, folks, because otherwise you're going to be delusioned out there. You're going to be so disillusioned. I watched Fox News yesterday as I was preparing for this speech, and by the time I was finished watching it, I was depressed. That takes a lot. So I decided to shut them all off. No mainstream media, no Fox News. It's only news people like Dan Bongino that I'm going to watch now, Sean Hannity on the radio, the people we trust and that we've trusted for the past 4 years. So save yourself that headache. So tactic number 10 is something that you need to recognize. The major premise for tactics is the development of operations that will maintain a constant pressure on the opposition. That means come at Trump with everything they've got, and that's what they're doing. We saw it with when all of a sudden they started getting mail-in ballots approved state by state. They changed the state election laws. And that might be Trump's saving grace, because they didn't go through the legislature in Pennsylvania, for example. What'd they do? They went to the judge. That is unconstitutional. And I am sure there's a lot happening behind the scenes that we're not aware of, and I'm pretty sure that's one biggie. Another thing they did, censorship by the tech companies. These are all operations designed by the left to beat our president and demoralize us. They've skewed the media coverage. They stopped counting early. Remember that? That was just another operation. They thwarted the poll watchers. And the biggie, I think, that we all need to keep an eye on is the computer manipulations, the voting machines, and the software. Everybody's heard of Hammer and SCORECARD, right? Anybody not heard of Hammer and SCORECARD? If you haven't, please go to my blog. That is huge. My blog is at thedeplorablereport.com, and I go into that in great detail. And that's a must. Because you've got some very, very influential folks behind that. For example, Lieutenant General Matt Thomas McInerney. He talks all about Hammer and SCORECARD, and it is absolutely shocking. And it was basically a way to create massive voter fraud on a massive scale. How about Dominion voting machines? We're hearing more and more about that, right? Today, I did a bunch of research. You'll find that also on my blog. I did an article on that, and I uncovered something that's still not in the news. How many here actually have heard of the Delian Project? Go to my blog. It'll shock you. I guarantee you the president knows about it. I was so concerned about it, though, that I called a very good friend of mine whose son is Pam Bondi's godson, and I said to him, you got to get this information to her, because I still haven't heard about it. The Delian Project is on the Clinton Foundation website, and it starts off, the very first sentence starts off with talking about Dominion voting machines. They've been used in third world countries to to challenge their voting, to challenge their elections for years. That hasn't even come out yet. There's so much I know our president has in his back pocket. You know who complained about Dominion voting machines? Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren 1 year ago. I don't know how that slipped through our fingers, but obviously they knew it was a problem, so that may play in our good hand too. Let me tell you what Stalin said. Probably a lot of you people know that. I know you do, Bill. It doesn't matter who votes. What's important is who counts the votes. And that's why these voting machines are going to be the key to Trump saving our country, I am convinced. So what can we expect going forward? Here's one to really be on the lookout for. Tactic number 5, chapter 5. Ridicule is man's most potent weapon. You're going to be hearing a lot about how Trump is being childlike, revengeful, he's not playing fair, he's being a big old baby, you know, all the same stuff they love to do. Do not buy into it. They want to force him to concede. That is the worst thing he can do. They're going to play tactic number 13 on him. Pick a target, freeze it, personalize it, and polarize it. That means they're going to try to throw so much on him that all of us are going to be divided. We're going to separate from him. We're going to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did that, and that. I can't believe he's not doing. You mean it's against, you mean precedent actually isn't, he should concede? Oh, then we've got to. He's got to. Who has already agreed to that? Let me tell you a little list. Who's already dividing and already going against our president. And these are the people you want to write to, because it's up to us now, folks. We cannot give this fight up now. This would be the worst time to give it up. I don't care how disillusioned you feel, he is still in the game, and as long as our president is still in the game, we're in the game. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine thinks he should concede. He thinks he should give Biden access to intel. Absolutely not. Biden and his team will get in there and they'll start smudging everything up about Hunter and whatever else they can to their favor, right? Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, Ben Sasse, Mitt Romney, Lisa Murkowski, these we can figure, Susan Collins, Fred Upton, Francis Rooney from Florida. I didn't recognize that name. Anybody know who that is? Will Hurd, Adam Kinzinger. We've got a lot of Republicans that are so great about dividing ourselves. So it's up to us to stick together like glue until the day our president says he concedes, which I don't see. Because I don't know about you, but I'm seeing a whole lot of evidence to prove otherwise. Are you all?
Yes.
Yes. I'm seeing it left and right if we look in the right places. Folks, we can't let our country go the way of Venezuela, because they will pack the Supreme Court. They've told us they would. That's exactly what Venezuela did, exactly what they did. And it's not going to take our country long to do that. So we got to fight with everything we've got. Here's what Trump has to do and probably will do, in my guesstimation. All his lawsuits, all these recounts, what he's doing with all these is the same thing as Tactic 10. He is keeping the pressure on them from all different directions. So I see all these things as incredibly positive. The SCOTUS case in Pennsylvania, I feel is going to be a really big boon for him. Nobody's talking about it in the mainstream media. And I think there's a reason why. I have a 3-part series on my blog And two of them, one is about hammer and scorecard, and the other is about the Dominion voting machines. The third one I'm going to write this week is going to be about the Pennsylvania state law, because if you understand that, what they did there in Pennsylvania and in other states was extraordinarily unconstitutional. So Trump has a very good chance at turning Pennsylvania around. Michigan is where they stole all those 6,000. Well, we know Dominion is in many of the counties, just in that state alone, but also in about 37, last I heard, states around the country. We're not talking about thousands of votes. We're not even talking about hundreds of thousands of votes. We are literally talking about millions of votes that can make a difference, right? You know why we were over in Germany? Because the Dominion server was located over in Germany. That's why. They offshored our votes. And from everything I understand, we got that server back. So, another thing that Trump is going to be doing, because once that vote in Pennsylvania gets turned around, folks, that's called Act 77. That was Act number 77 in their Constitution, state law 77. You know what it said? It said that all the mail-in votes are supposed to be received by 8 p.m. election day. And it said that the sections, each section of that act are unseverable, meaning if you take one out, they're all bad. So the Dems did something real dirty there, which they did in other states. Instead, they went to the state legislature and they told them, hey, look, you know, how about if we just extend the days a couple days? And the state legislature, who were Republicans, said, no, I don't think so. And then they jumped over the legislator, went straight to their Supreme Court, who are a bunch of libs and leftists. That's how that happened. That's how it ended up in SCOTUS. That's how Alito is going to come back. And now that we have Amy, do you realize why she couldn't vote on it the last time around? Because it went to a 4-4 split. That law. And do you all know?
She wasn't seated right.
She wasn't seated in time. She didn't have time to read it, but guess what? She does now. Amendment 14. It's the last thing I want to talk about because this is so critical too. Amendment 14 is going to be critical in this. That grants American citizens equal protection under the law. Section 2 specifically addresses voter suppression. It states that the suppression of citizens to participate in voting, guess what happens if they're found guilty of that? They will lose a portion, that state will lose a portion of their own seats in Congress as well as their electoral college representation. Yes. Look up Amendment 14. States like California are actively protecting the big tech platforms that are suppressing voter participation. They have 55 votes. You think it's time for Trump to play dirty? Yes. I think it's time for him to play real dirty. I don't think he needs our permission. I think he's just getting started, folks. So what can we do? One, stay away from mainstream media. Please. I'm telling you, I was so depressed yesterday, and that's not like me. And I'm so up about this. I don't like to say 100% about anything, but 99.999% absolutely positive that President Trump will be our president for the next 4 years. So what can we do? We have to go on marches. When you hear rallies, there's going to be some coming up. I'm going to be forming some. We have to keep Trump's name in the spotlight. We can't let them call Biden president-elect anymore. Stop that. Anytime you hear somebody say that, you tell them, excuse me, no, he's not. He's the former vice president. It's up to us to straighten people out and let them know what's really going on. Because that power is just an illusion unless we give it to them. We need to sign petitions whenever we see them come up. We can't just say we're going to and go on about with our day. This is critical. We need to write our legislatures. Stop giving up, stand strong, unite with Trump. And when he wins, and by the way, I was originally asked to come speak to you about BLM down in our city. I hope to do that one day, because the day they announce that Trump really did win and everything else was just a big facade, we need to be prepared. I am collecting a group email sheet, by the way. Make sure to see me before you leave so I can get your name on that, because we need to unite there as well. Let me read you, before ending here, one last statement that to me is the most important statement that Alinsky ever wrote. This comes from a leftist community organizer that is, by the way, the idol of Hillary Clinton. He said this: "The judgment of history leans heavily on the outcome of success or failure. It spells the difference between the traitor and the patriotic hero. There can be no such thing as a successful traitor. For if one succeeds, he becomes a founding father." And what that translates to, folks, if we do not fight and we don't make sure we stand strongly behind our president, and if those people get into power, they will change history. They will change everything about this election. They will say he stole it. Just like they've been doing for the past 4 years. So it is highly critical. We have a last opportunity here to stand up and stand strong, folks. Let's do it. We can. Don't give up until Trump says he does. Thank you very much.
That was phenomenal. So, we